Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, you're 25 years old, and you have your degree. No spouse, no children, no major obligations, no inherited wealth, no powerful connections, no trust fund, and no billionaire parents. Just youth, energy, time, and one ambitious goal. You want to become a billionaire, not a millionaire. Not financially comfortable. A billionaire. 9 zeros. A net worth that places you among the rarest people on earth. The question is, what would be the smartest way to approach that mission? Would you buy stocks? Start a business? Invest in real estate? Work on Wall Street? Launch a technology company? Become an influencer? Trade cryptocurrency? Or simply save aggressively? Today we're going to answer that question. Not from the perspective of social media gurus, not from lottery ticket thinking, and not from people selling courses, but from the perspective of economic reality. What actually creates billionaires? What do the numbers say? What does history say? What can we learn from people who have already done it? Because if there is one thing that becomes obvious after studying the world's wealthiest individuals, it is this. Billionaires rarely become billionaires because they are better investors. They become billionaires because they become owners, and that changes everything. Chapter 1. Understanding the billionaire math. The first thing I would do at age 25 is understand the scale of the challenge. Most people dramatically underestimate the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire. A millionaire with $1 million is wealthy. A billionaire with $1 billion is not 1,000 times richer in lifestyle, but financially, they literally have 1,000 times more money. If you invested $10,000 and achieved an extraordinary annual return of 15% for 40 years, you would end up with roughly $2.7 million. Amazing, but nowhere near a billion. This is the first harsh reality. Investment returns alone rarely create billionaires from ordinary beginnings. Ownership does, scale does, leverage does, and building assets that serve millions of people does. That's why the billionaire list is filled with founders. Founders of software companies, founders of retail chains, founders of financial institutions, founders of industrial companies, founders of media businesses, founders of healthcare companies, founders of energy companies, and founders of logistics networks. The lesson is clear. Investing is necessary, but investing alone is usually insufficient. The main mission must be creating something valuable enough that millions of people voluntarily use it. Chapter 2. My first priority would not be investing. This may sound surprising. If I were 25 years old again, my first priority would not be investing. It would be increasing my earning power. This is where most people make their first major mistake. They obsess over where to invest $5,000, but ignore how to turn their annual income from $50,000 into $500,000. Think about it. An extra 10% return on $5,000 produces only $500, but doubling your income could produce tens of thousands of additional dollars every year. At age 25, your greatest asset is not your money. Your greatest asset is your future earning capacity. That's the engine. Everything else comes later. So I would spend my first years aggressively investing in myself. Learning, sales, negotiation, communication, leadership, technology, artificial intelligence, financial analysis, business operations, marketing, and capital allocation. These skills compound for decades. Unlike stocks, nobody can take them away. Unlike real estate, they cannot crash, and unlike currencies, they do not depreciate. Skills are portable wealth, and portable wealth creates permanent opportunity. Chapter 3. Why I would choose an industry with massive upside. Not all industries create billionaires equally. This is a fact many people don't like to hear. You can work incredibly hard. You can be highly intelligent. You can be disciplined. Yet if you choose an industry with limited scalability, your odds decrease dramatically. If I were 25 today, I would focus my career around industries experiencing enormous global expansion. Historically, these have included railroads, oil, automobiles, computers, the internet, mobile technology, and cloud computing. And now, artificial intelligence, automation, advanced computing, biotechnology, energy innovation, cybersecurity, and digital infrastructure. Why? Because billion-dollar fortunes often emerge when personal talent intersects with massive economic trends. The goal isn't merely to work hard. The goal is to work hard where the tide is already rising. A mediocre surfer cannot create waves, but a great surfer can ride them. Likewise, great entrepreneurs position themselves where powerful economic waves already exist. Chapter 4. The financial system I would follow. Let's get practical. Suppose I'm earning my first serious income. How would I handle money? I would divide every dollar into 4 categories. Category 1, living expenses. Category 2, investments. Category 3, business opportunities. Category 4, learning and skill acquisition. Most people spend almost everything on Category 1. Future billionaires usually prioritize the other 3. For example, if I earn $100,000 annually, I might allocate 50% toward living, 20% toward investments, 20% toward future business opportunities, 10% toward education and skills. The exact percentages matter less than the principle. Money should not simply be consumed, it should be deployed. Every dollar should have a mission. Every dollar should either generate income, acquire knowledge, create ownership, or increase future earning power. Chapter 5. The first $100,000. The first major milestone would not be $1 million. It would be $100,000 because the first $100,000 changes psychology. It changes options, confidence, and flexibility. And it begins creating meaningful investment income. Many successful investors have noted that the first 6 figures are among the hardest because initially your money is not doing much work. You're doing almost all the work, but once capital begins accumulating, a transition occurs. Your savings begin producing additional savings, and your investments begin generating returns. The machine slowly starts helping you. At this stage, I would focus relentlessly on increasing income, avoiding lifestyle inflation, building liquidity, maintaining flexibility, and preserving optionality. Optionality is one of the most underrated concepts in wealth creation. The person with cash can act when opportunities appear, but the person living paycheck to paycheck cannot. Chapter 6. How I would actually invest. Now let's discuss investing. This is where many viewers expect some secret strategy. There isn't one, at least not initially. If I were 25 and starting from scratch, most of my investment portfolio would be extremely boring. Broad market index funds. Why? Because my goal would not be to beat professional investors. My goal would be to compound capital while I build my primary wealth engine. Remember, the future billionaire's greatest asset is usually not his portfolio. It's his business, his ownership stake, his company, his intellectual property, his platform, his network, and his enterprise. Therefore, I would allow index funds to quietly compound while focusing my energy on building something scalable. The stock market would be my wealth preservation vehicle, not necessarily my wealth creation vehicle. This distinction is critical. Many people attempt to trade their way to extraordinary wealth. Few succeed. Most billionaires built businesses first and invested later. Chapter 7. Why entrepreneurship changes everything. Let's imagine 2 people. Person A saves diligently and invests in index funds. Person B builds a company. After 20 years, Person A may have accumulated several $1 million, an incredible achievement, but Person B has a different possibility. A company generating hundreds of millions in annual revenue may eventually be valued in the billions, and if Person B owns a significant share, their net worth can explode. This is why entrepreneurship dominates billionaire creation. Not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because ownership scales. You can only work so many hours. You can only earn so much salary, but a company can serve millions of customers simultaneously. That's leverage, and leverage is the language of billionaires. Chapter 8. Why billionaires think differently about debt. One of the biggest misconceptions about wealth is that rich people avoid debt. In reality, many of the wealthiest individuals and corporations in history have used debt extensively. The difference is not whether debt exists. The difference is how debt is used. Poor debt finances consumption, but productive debt finances assets. Poor debt buys liabilities while productive debt acquires cash flow. Poor debt funds today's lifestyle, while productive debt funds tomorrow's income. If I were 25 years old and determined to become a billionaire, I would become obsessed with understanding this distinction. I would avoid high-interest consumer debt like a disease, credit card balances, luxury car loans, expensive lifestyle purchases, and designer items purchased to impress strangers. These are wealth destroyers. But I would spend years studying how businesses use capital, how real estate investors use leverage, how acquisitions are financed, how corporations issue bonds, and how entrepreneurs raise capital. The world's wealthiest individuals often borrow money not because they need it, but because they understand opportunity cost. Every dollar tied up unnecessarily is a dollar that cannot be deployed elsewhere. The key lesson is simple. Never borrow to look rich. Borrow only when the asset being acquired is likely to generate returns greater than the cost. Chapter 9. Equity, the real secret of extreme wealth. If there is one word that repeatedly appears behind billionaire fortunes, it is this: equity. Not salary, not bonuses, and not commissions. Equity. Ownership. A salary can make you wealthy, but ownership can make you extraordinarily wealthy. Consider the difference. A highly paid executive may earn $1 million annually, and an owner may earn nothing in salary for years. Yet if the company becomes worth $10 billion and the owner holds 20%, that stake alone is worth $2 billion. The owner wins because of scale. This is why I would spend my 20s seeking ownership opportunities. That does not necessarily mean founding a company immediately. It could mean joining a promising startup early, accepting equity compensation, becoming a business partner, acquiring small businesses, creating intellectual property, building digital assets, launching software products, and developing media platforms. The goal would be simple. Accumulate ownership positions because wealth on a billionaire scale is almost always connected to valuable assets rather than high income alone. Chapter 10. The dangers of lifestyle inflation. One of the greatest threats to future wealth is not investment losses, it's lifestyle inflation. Imagine two graduates, both receive raises every year. The first increases spending whenever income increases, while the second keeps expenses relatively stable and channels excess income in assets. Fast forward 20 years, their incomes may have been identical, but their outcomes will not be. The first person experiences wealth temporarily, but the second person accumulates wealth permanently. If I were 25 again, I would intentionally delay many luxury purchases, not because luxury is evil, not because success should not be enjoyed, but because early capital is incredibly valuable. A dollar invested at 25 is dramatically more powerful than a dollar invested at 45. Every dollar has decades to compound. The early years are not the time to impress people. They're the time to acquire assets. The irony is that those who delay gratification often achieve greater freedom later. The people trying to look rich frequently stay trapped. The people focused on becoming rich often eventually gain the ability to live however they choose. Chapter 11. Why I would build multiple income streams. At age 25, relying entirely on one source of income is risky. A job is valuable, but a job alone creates vulnerability. Economic downturns happen, industries change, technology evolves, companies restructure, and careers stall. That is why I would focus on creating multiple streams of income as early as possible. Not 20 streams, not 50 streams, but just a few meaningful ones. For example, income stream number 1, primary career income. Income stream number 2, investment income. Income stream number 3, business income. Income stream number 4, digital assets or intellectual property. The objective is resilience. When one source slows down, others continue operating. Over time, these streams begin reinforcing one another. The business generates profits, the profits fund investments, the investments create passive income, and the passive income funds additional opportunities. Eventually, wealth becomes self-reinforcing. Chapter 12. How I would use real estate. Many people ask, would real estate be part of the plan? Absolutely, but perhaps not in the way most people expect. If my goal were billionaire-level wealth, I would view real estate primarily as a tool rather than the ultimate destination. Real estate offers several advantages: leverage, cash flow, tax benefits, appreciation, and inflation protection. But I would avoid making emotional purchases. I would not rush to buy the largest house I could qualify for. Instead, I would focus on assets, rental properties, commercial buildings, industrial facilities, storage facilities, data centers, and logistics infrastructure, properties that generate cash flow. The key principle remains consistent: acquire assets that pay you. Avoid liabilities that depend on you. The assets should strengthen your financial position, not weaken it. Chapter 13. Networks are hidden capital. Many people think networking means collecting business cards. That's not what truly matters. The most valuable networks are built on trust. Trust takes years, and trust creates opportunities that money alone cannot buy. If I were 25 years old, I would deliberately surround myself with ambitious people, founders, investors, operators, builders, and creators. Not because they possess magical knowledge, but because environments influence outcomes. Ideas spread through networks, and opportunities spread through networks. Capital spreads through networks, and partnerships spread through networks. The people around you shape your expectations. If everyone you know believes six figures is impossible, six figures feels impossible. If everyone around you is building companies, investing, and creating value, those behaviors become normal. The network becomes an invisible asset, one that compounds just like capital. Chapter 14. Why location still matters. Technology has made remote work possible, but geography still matters. Certain locations concentrate talent, capital, ideas, innovation, and opportunity. Historically, many fortunes emerge from being in the right place at the right time. Not because success was guaranteed, but because proximity accelerates learning. If I were 25 today, I would seriously consider spending time in environments where ambitious people gather. Technology hubs, financial centers, startup ecosystems, research institutions, and emerging innovation clusters. Being physically present where opportunities are created can dramatically increase the number of doors that open. Sometimes a single introduction changes a career, sometimes one partnership changes a business, and sometimes one idea changes a life. The probability of those events increases when you place yourself near opportunity. Chapter 15. Building a personal brand before you need one. 20 years ago, reputation spread slowly. Today, reputation scales globally. If I were beginning at 25, I would start building a personal brand immediately. Not for fame, nor vanity, but for leverage. A strong reputation creates opportunities. It attracts talent, investors, partners, customers, employees, and capital. The goal would not be to become an influencer. The goal would be to become known for competence, integrity, expertise, and for creating value. The internet allows extraordinary individuals to build credibility at unprecedented speed. Articles, podcasts, videos, research, and thought leadership. All of these become digital assets. Assets that continue working long after they are created. Chapter 16. The Billionaire Time Allocation Framework. The older I get, the more I realize that wealth is ultimately a function of resource allocation. Money matters, but time matters even more. Everyone receives the same 24 hours, yet outcomes differ dramatically. Why? Because people allocate time differently. If I were 25 again, I would evaluate every activity through one question. Does this move me closer to creating valuable assets? Activities would fall into three categories: high value, medium value, and low value. High value activities create assets, build skills, expand networks, and generate opportunities. Medium value activities maintain life, while low value activities consume time without creating meaningful returns. The objective would not be perfection. It would be awareness, because eventually success becomes less about working harder and more about directing effort toward the highest leverage opportunities. Chapter 17. Learning capital allocation. At some point, every successful wealth builder becomes a capital allocator. This is one of the most important skills nobody teaches in school. Capital allocation simply means deciding where resources should go. Should profits be reinvested? Used for acquisitions? Returned to investors? Spent on research? Used to hire talent? Used to enter new markets? The ability to answer these questions often determines whether a company becomes worth millions or billions. If I were starting over, I would study the greatest capital allocators in history, not merely to copy them, but to understand how they think, because eventually the challenge is no longer making money. The challenge becomes deploying money intelligently, and that skill compounds for an entire lifetime. Chapter 18. The most important rule of all. At age 25, the greatest advantage is neither intelligence, nor money, nor connections. It is time. Time allows mistakes. Time allows learning. Time allows compounding. Time allows reinvention. Most future billionaires are not obvious at 25. Many look ordinary. Many fail repeatedly. Many spend years building before anyone notices. The common thread is persistence. They remain in the game long enough for compounding to work, long enough for skills to mature, long enough for opportunities to emerge, and long enough for ownership to scale. The billionaire journey is rarely explosive. Most often it is gradual, then sudden. Years of invisible progress followed by visible results. That is why if I were 25 years old and starting over today, my focus would not be on becoming rich quickly. My focus would be on becoming increasingly valuable, because value creation precedes wealth creation and wealth creation precedes wealth preservation. Everything else is a consequence of that simple sequence. Chapter 19. The exact 10-year roadmap I would follow from age 25 to 35. If I were 25 years old and serious about building a path toward billionaire-level wealth, I would not think in months. I would think in decades. Most people dramatically overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year, but they underestimate what they can accomplish in 10. The first decade would be about laying foundations, not displaying success, not impressing friends, and not appearing wealthy on social media. Foundations, because skyscrapers are not built from the top down. They are built from the ground up. My roadmap would look something like this. Age 25 to 28, acquire rare and valuable skills, increase income aggressively, build a strong professional network, accumulate capital, study business relentlessly, experiment with side ventures, learn sales, learn marketing, learn finance, learn leadership, and most importantly, develop judgment. Age 28 to 31, begin acquiring ownership, launch businesses, purchase assets, create intellectual property, build systems, hire talent, develop leverage, and focus on scaling rather than simply working harder. Age 31 to 35. Double down on what works, eliminate distractions, concentrate resources behind proven opportunities, expand aggressively where economics are favorable, move from earning income to controlling assets. By age 35, the objective would not necessarily be billionaire status. The objective would be owning something with extraordinary future potential, because billionaires are usually created by what they own, not what they earn. Chapter 20. Why most people never get rich. Let's discuss an uncomfortable truth. Most people never become wealthy, not because they lack intelligence or lack effort, but because they unknowingly participate in a financial system that makes wealth accumulation difficult. The typical cycle looks like this. Go to school, get a job, earn more money, increase spending, take on debt, and repeat. Decades pass, and net worth grows slowly, and financial freedom remains distant. There is nothing inherently wrong with this path. Millions of people live meaningful and successful lives following it, but it is not typically how billionaires are created. The billionaire path usually includes ownership, leverage, scale, innovation, risk-taking, long-term thinking, and most importantly, an obsession with creating value. The richest individuals in history solve problems for millions of people, sometimes billions. The larger the problem solved, the larger the rewards often become. Chapter 21. How billionaires think about risk. Many people believe billionaires are reckless gamblers. In reality, most successful billionaires think very carefully about risk. The public sees the outcome, but they rarely see the preparation. Here's the difference. Average people often take small risks for small rewards, but great entrepreneurs frequently take calculated risks for massive rewards. They seek asymmetry. An asymmetric opportunity means limited downside and massive upside. Imagine risking $1 to potentially earn 100. Even if success is unlikely, the mathematics become attractive. Many billionaires spend years searching for opportunities with this profile. Not guaranteed success, but with favorable odds. If I were 25 today, I would constantly ask, what opportunities offer extraordinary upside relative to their downside? This mindset changes everything. Chapter 22. The industries most likely to create future billionaires. History rewards those who identify major economic transformations early. The billionaires of the railroad era built railroads. The billionaires of the oil era built energy empires. The billionaires of the internet era built technology platforms. So where might future billionaires emerge? No one knows with certainty, but several sectors appear especially promising. Artificial intelligence, robotics, advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, biotechnology, longevity science, cybersecurity, energy infrastructure, space technology, digital finance, and even data infrastructure. The goal is not predicting the future perfectly. The goal is positioning yourself where growth is most likely to occur. Being early in a powerful trend can create opportunities that simply do not exist elsewhere. Chapter 23. Why concentration creates fortunes. One of the most interesting patterns among billionaire fortunes is concentration. Many fortunes were created because an individual concentrated their efforts and resources into a small number of opportunities. Consider founders. Their wealth is often tied primarily to one company. Investors who generated extraordinary returns frequently concentrated capital into their highest conviction ideas. This does not mean recklessness and does not mean betting everything blindly. It means recognizing that extraordinary outcomes often require extraordinary focus. Diversification protects wealth, but concentration often creates it. If I were 25, I would diversify enough to survive, but I would concentrate enough to matter because no one becomes extraordinary by spreading attention equally across 50 unrelated pursuits. Chapter 24. The Power of Obsession. Scene 25. Visuals. Inventors, founders, scientists, and entrepreneurs working late into the night. There is another pattern visible among many great wealth creators: obsession. Not unhealthy obsession, but purposeful obsession. The ability to remain focused on a problem for years. Most people become interested, then distracted, then interested in something else. Extraordinary individuals often remain engaged long after excitement fades. They continue when progress slows. They continue when recognition is absent, and they continue when results are invisible. The world frequently rewards consistency more than intensity. If I were starting over at 25, I would choose a field fascinating enough to sustain my attention for decades because billion-dollar outcomes often require decade-long commitment. Chapter 25. Building a company worth hundreds of millions. Let's imagine the ultimate goal is creating a company. How would I think about it? First, I would avoid chasing trends blindly. Instead, I would search for valuable problems. Problems create demand, and demand creates customers. Customers create revenue, and revenue creates enterprise value. Many founders start with technology. The best founders often start with customer pain. What frustrates people? What wastes time? What costs money? And what remains inefficient? Those questions frequently reveal opportunities. Then I would focus relentlessly on creating value, not funding, not publicity, and not valuation. Value, because eventually every successful company must earn the right to exist through the value it provides. Chapter 26. The transition from worker to owner. One of the most important transitions in wealth creation is psychological. The transition from worker to owner. Workers think about income, while owners think about systems. Workers think about effort, but owners think about leverage. Workers think about hours, but owners think about outcomes. Neither role is inherently superior, But billionaire-level wealth almost always requires ownership thinking. Ownership means asking different questions. How can this process scale? How can this system operate without me? How can technology increase efficiency? How can capital generate more capital? The answers to these questions determine whether growth remains linear or becomes exponential. Chapter 27. Why financial freedom comes before billionaire status. Here's something many ambitious people overlook. The goal should not initially be becoming a billionaire. The first goal should be financial freedom. Financial freedom means your assets generate enough income to support your desired lifestyle. At that point, necessity disappears and you can choose your work, your projects, your schedule, and your priorities. Ironically, many great fortunes are built after this stage. Why? Because once survival pressure disappears, people can focus on creating long-term value rather than chasing immediate income. Freedom often becomes the platform from which larger achievements emerge. Chapter 28. The millionaire phase versus the billionaire phase. Becoming a millionaire and becoming a billionaire require overlapping but different strategies. The millionaire phase emphasizes saving, investing, skill acquisition, discipline, and patience. The billionaire phase emphasizes ownership, scale, capital allocation, leadership, systems, and leverage. The first phase is largely about managing yourself, while the second phase is largely about managing organizations. This distinction is crucial. Many people possess the skills required to become millionaires, but far fewer develop the capabilities necessary to build billion-dollar enterprises. That is why leadership becomes increasingly important as wealth grows. Chapter 29. The importance of reputation. If I could choose between a larger bank account and a stronger reputation early in life, I would often choose reputation because reputation attracts opportunities. Investors prefer trustworthy founders. Customers prefer trustworthy businesses. Partners prefer trustworthy relationships, and employees prefer trustworthy leaders. A reputation built over decades can become one of the most valuable assets a person possesses, and unlike money, reputation compounds socially. People talk, networks expand, trust spreads, and opportunities multiply. In many cases, a strong reputation becomes a force multiplier for every other asset you own. Chapter 30. The final lesson. If I were 25 years old today, and my goal was to become a billionaire, I would remember one critical truth. The objective is not money. Money is a byproduct. The real objective is creating extraordinary value. Every durable fortune in history was connected to value creation. Building products, solving problems, creating systems, and improving lives.